Download this code from codegive.com, link in the description below. Resetting gradients in graphics design software, such as Adobe Photoshop, can help maintain a clean workspace and ensure that you are using the default gradient settings. However, since you mentioned using the gradient editor, I assume you are looking for a way to manipulate gradients programmatically, perhaps in a coding context like web development or using a graphics library. Here's a tutorial on how to reset and manage gradients in CSS and HTML, along with an example. Resetting gradients in CSS. When working with CSS, gradients are often applied using the background image property. If you want to reset a gradient, you would typically remove or change the CSS rule associated with it. Steps to reset gradients in CSS. 1. Identify the element, determine which HTML element has the gradient applied. To remove the gradient, you can reset the gradient by either removing the background property or setting it to a solid color. 3. Define a new gradient. Optionally, you can set a new gradient as needed. Example code. Here's an example demonstrating how to reset and apply gradients using CSS and HTML. Explanation of the code. 1. HTML structure. The div with the class gradient background contains the initial gradient styling. 2 buttons allow you to reset the gradient and apply a new one. 2 CSS styles. The .gradient background class initially has a linear gradient. The .reset gradient class removes the gradient and sets a solid background color. The .new gradient class defines a different linear gradient. 3 JavaScript functions. Reset gradient. This function adds the reset gradient class to the div, which removes the gradient and applies a solid color. Apply new gradient. This function removes the reset gradient class and applies a new gradient by adding the new gradient class. Conclusion. This tutorial demonstrates how to reset and manage gradients in a web development context using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you were looking for a different context, like a specific software application, or have any other questions, feel free to clarify.